Our next quadrilateral we're going to talk about is a rhombus, which is going to be very similar to a parallelogram. So the first thing that we know about a rhombus is that it has four congruent sides. So if we label our points A, B, C, and D, we know that all four of our sides are the same. So we can write A, B is congruent to BC, which is congruent to CD, which is congruent to AD. We also know that just like a parallelogram, the consecutive angles are supplementary. So since our sides are all parallel, our angles A, B, let's try that again. This is D. Angle A plus B is 180. Angle B plus angle C is 180. Angle C plus angle D gives us 180. And angle D plus angle A is equal to 180 as well. So all those are supplementary angles. Then we also know that the diagonals bisect each other. So if we draw our diagonals, let's try that one again. This side and this side are going to be the same, and these two sides are going to be the same because they bisect each other. So if we call this point M, we know that AM is congruent to MC. DM is congruent to MB. And we know that the opposite angles are congruent. A and C are congruent, and D and B are congruent. So these last three were also parallelogram facts as well. So I'm just going to write these. This over to the side. Two, 3, and 4 are all true of a parallelogram as well. Now, the next ones are going to be specific to a rhombus, not true of a parallelogram. So number 5 says that the diagonals bisect opposite angles. So if we draw our diagonals in again, this is saying that these two angles here and these angles here are all going to be the same. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So our diagonals bisect those angles of the rhombus. So we can say that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all congruent. And then 5, 6, 7, and 8 are also all congruent. And then the last piece is that our diagonals are also perpendicular in a rhombus. That means all 4 of these angles are going to be 90 degrees. So if we label this as AC, we can write AC is perpendicular to BD. Okay, so let's look at some examples with a rhombus. Here's the information for our last two examples on a rhombus. And for our first one, first thing we need to find is the measure of angle 1. So to find the measure of angle 1, we know from our last page that angle 1 and angle next to it, angle 55, are going to be the same because the diagonals bisect the angle of the parallelogram. So if this one's 55, angle 1 is 55. And then we also know that angle 1 and that angle 55 are congruent to 2 and 3 as well. So those two are also going to be 55. Okay, then to find angle 4, we need to figure out this whole angle over here. So if we know angle 1 is also 55, we know this whole angle right here, this whole thing is 110. Well, we know that the two angles in our rhombus are going to be supplementary. So if we have 180 minus 110, we're left with 70. So that makes this whole angle over here 70 degrees. But we want to just find angle 4. So in order to find that, we got to take that 70 and divide it by 2. And we can do that because it's a rhombus, so those two angles are going to be the same. Those two angles would not be the same if it was a parallelogram, but since it's a rhombus, we know that they're the same. Divide by 2, and angle 4 is 35. And then if we know angle 4, we also know that angle 6 is going to be the same. So angle 6 is 35. And then our last one, angle 5, we know those 4 angles in the middle of a rhombus are always 90 degrees. Okay? For number 2 over here, we are looking more at the length of the sides. So if we know that MN is 10, that tells us that all 4 sides are 10. So NO is 10, PO is 10, and MP is 10. Then we have NQ. Well, if we know PQ is 6, NQ is going to be 6. And if OQ is 8, MQ is going to be 8. Then MO, we know those two pieces are both 8, so we add them together and get 16. And NP, both those pieces are 6. 6 plus 6 gives us 12. Okay? Now remember that every rhombus is also a parallelogram, and every square is a rhombus, but the opposite is not true. Just because it's a parallelogram does not make it a rhombus, and just because it's a rhombus does not make it a square. So it's important to remember those notes.